Over the past few months, more and more groups are lining up against TikTok, including several states and European countries. With the January deadline looming for the company to divest itself from its Chinese owner, we're going to look into the latest movements around the social media giant and whether it's doing enough to protect children and teens, coming up on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Dr. Lisa Stroman. She is founder and CEO of the Digital Citizen Academy, as well as a licensed psychologist, author, speaker, and attorney. And you've been on the show before, so welcome back to the show, Dr. Stroman.
Thanks for having me back.
As I told you before the show, you were one of my favorite guests, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So now it looks like the January deadline for TikTok to divest itself from owner ByteDance is coming up. So what are you hearing from your sources around whether this is going to happen or not?
Unlikely. I know that ByteDance has been very vocal about their lack of interest of selling any of it. To divest any of the billions, well, trillions of dollars that they're bringing in on their ad revenue. So I don't think that anything's going to happen of that. I think that if you look at the level of impact that they have, 24 countries have banned them in one way or the other, particularly from governmental agencies and state use, things like that. But to me, I think it's too valuable for them. And so they're going to fight to the end to try to keep it.
And are you hearing maybe that, I'm assuming that maybe people would be waiting for the results of the presidential election before something happened? I guess that's maybe the January deadline was done so that we would know at some point, maybe who the next administration was going to be.
I think that they were, I think Biden signed something because I think that he was feeling pressure to do that. And I think it doesn't matter who was in that seat. I think that given the amount of evidence that they had to do something. Pushing it down the road wasn't extremely helpful by putting a time set and a provision on it. But I think that basically administration change will what doesn't really matter which side is going to have to deal with it one way or the other. And I think that there's probably some strategic delays that are happening for sure.
Right.
I also think this is going to be multi-year battle between the government and TikTok in order to fight for this. So it doesn't really matter the January deadline.
Okay.
It's probably going to go into 26, 27 before it even comes to litigation.
Yeah. And there's also some potential Supreme Court decisions that might happen before then too, right? I think some people were telling me December to be aware of a potential decision. And that might just be the Montana lawsuit.
Yeah, I do know that they are starting to get more and more onto it. And I think that if you look at SCOTUS or the Supreme Court briefings and the information they're putting out there, they're bringing on clerks and such that are going to be more helpful in this technologically kind of litigation space that's coming on.
Yeah. All right, so it's been a few months since we had you on the show, and since then, we've seen a bunch of other news around TikTok, social media addiction, all that other kind of stuff. So I just want to review a couple of the things. So first of all, there was a bunch of states' attorneys general filed lawsuits against TikTok around the issue of protecting children against addictive behaviors and adult content. The Washington Post has reported that Apple privately warned TikTok that the platform featured more mature content that was suitable for children under 17, urging the company to raise the age range. It currently lists it at 12 and under. There was an article just yesterday in the BBC. France has now sued TikTok as well for 7 families, two of them that unfortunately the teens had killed themselves. And then there's continuing more studies around the potential harm for this content. So do you feel like we're turning the corner? Because I think you have an update too as well, but do you feel like the trend is moving, we are turning the corner towards more and more awareness and understanding around the problems that not just TikTok, but also general social media addiction?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the awareness is actually coming out, that it is attached to it. I mean, you can have whatever industry leaders in big tech come up and testify in Congress and say that they're not attached, but the statistics and the evidence show otherwise. So you can actually see, there's a graph that I can show you for download for later for the audience to look at, but it's very clear that it's impacting them. And so I think that the litigation is a desperate move by our world leaders, like to go through and say, all right, we know we can't legislate our way out of this right now, and so they're going to have to go into kind of these civil remedies in order to kind of overstep that 230 exception that they have, and look at it in product defective warranty and things like that. So and some of the federal litigation, I've actually been retained to be a testifying expert on. So it's going to be very a wild ride, because the information, as you said, Apple knows, and actually kind of behind closed doors said, hey, you might have a little problem here. And because it's now impacting them for their, obviously the App Store and things like that. So it's definitely they're getting their kind of, I guess, their cards together on what they're going to play next.
Yeah.
But they're definitely coming together against some of this litigation that's coming. And they should be scared. There's a lot of evidence.
I mean, so you remain hopeful that this either, I guess the lawsuits will work in your favor. I guess I don't know if you're allowed to even talk about that.
Yeah. So I can't speak specifics to the cases, but I will tell you that, most of it, the federal multi-district litigation is public, so people can follow along with that if they want to see that out of the 9th District. But I will also say many of the states that are suing through the Attorney General's office is across the United States, and they're all banding together to kind of like do this in a cohesive sense. So I think that it will make a change, certainly. And I don't think that the ACLU's this is a First Amendment privacy issue, right?
Yeah,
it's going to work.
Yeah, we don't hear that a lot as much as obviously as much as you would hear maybe in a First Amendment case. It really does feel like with the number of different governments and groups that are doing these lawsuits, it's like, wow, you've got a kind of a groundswell that's growing.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a cannibalization that happens in some respects, because Facebook or Meta Group is basically saying, they're kind of being quiet over in the corner, but TikTok is very publicly coming out and saying, well, if you're going to do this to us, why aren't you doing it to Meta? And so I think that they don't really want, those conversations to go very much further. So,
well, yeah, and it just feels like, well, because if you ever did get that, you would hear from, well, Meta is not owned by a Chinese company, and I think that's where the U.S. government was like, well, that's what they're wary of. I think that the government is less interested in the addicting part of it, which but more about the potential for national security secrets or influencing through the algorithm, I think, is another big concern of theirs.
Right. And I think that if the public, I don't think you need a law degree or a background to recognize that, if it wasn't that big of a deal, then why wouldn't ByteDance just divest itself, allow it to be a U.S. held company, and then take revenue share on it? So it's not even about the dollars. It's about the access to the people that were using it. Yeah.
So, speaking of Meta, they recently launched some teen accounts for Instagram users, and I think I saw one a teen Uber account for some reason, but that's more about just getting your teen to where they need to go. But are these efforts? Do you think that are they happening because of what's going on with a lot of these lawsuits and the raised awareness? Are they doing enough? Is it just window dressing? Is it just that we're just kind of covering our ass here?
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that you said that, because I think it is a lot of covering our own ass.
Yeah.
And window dressing for most parts. I think psychologically, if you look at it, I think what's happening is parents are starting to look into this stuff, and they're like, hey, there is definitely a problem. And now all of a sudden Meta's like, oh yeah, but we have these teen accounts, so they're going to be totally safe. But I've seen this at so many other times whereby they're like, oh, this is harmful content. And then they blur or obfuscate the picture. And they're like, if you want to click through it, you can. So, it's really not about keeping the kids safe. It's really about putting forth kind of marketing and advertising nomenclature that they can say that they exist. I don't necessarily think they're saving kids.
Yeah, I was watching a program on Disney Plus or something, and a Meta ad came up for it, and I watched the ad and I had no idea what they were trying to do with this ad. It didn't make any sense. It was like, this kid was like, I'm going skateboarding and I'm wearing a helmet. So maybe that's what, and they're trying to make an analogy between wearing a helmet when you're skateboarding and then having an Instagram account or one of these teen accounts. It made no sense at all. And I'm pretty savvy about, advertising and what they mean, but like this one just went right over my head.
I think it's like thrown together hastily to like respond to the growing pressures that they have. And so I don't really think, again, like, the parenting controls and things like that. Like I talk about this all the time. I actually put QR codes in the speeches that I give. And I say to parents, this is going to drop you right where you need to be in order to do it. And I will say that when I do follow-up surveys with these families, I'm like, how many of you are able to like set those up on your own? And less than 10% are able to do it. So it's, they might be like creating the tools or putting things out there, but they're certainly not doing it in a way that makes it easy to use or whether or not it's actually going to do anything to help on the other end.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give you a story from my life because I love talking about my kids and my kids hate talking me. They're not a fan of me talking about them on the show, but my 15-year-old, she's my youngest, and she's the only one in the family that has a teen account or from the Apple phone. And so the other day I was in, she was misbehaving. That's all I'm going to say. And so I went into the phone settings and added app limits and added the downtime and all of the things that Apple lets you do. And she just like freaked out. Like she was just like, why are you doing this to me? This is so unfair. And, and this was for like 3 hours. And then she finally made a big enough stink. And my only goal was because I wanted to get location services enabled so that I can, know where she was. And so now I've got that. And I made a deal with her. I said, you let me track you on your phone where you are. And then I'll release these app limits. Cause again, the app limits thing is like, it's just so much work to like start monitoring it. And then, she does need it for school and, some of the phone stuff. It's like, I just decided, I'll just make the deal with you at that point. So that's my one story. Like it's still going on. I still see all of these behaviors.
Right. And I think it's interesting, like my kids are 16 and 17. So it's interesting to me when you look at my phone as the parent organizer, it says that they're 7 and 8 because I actually like kind of like created like a system in my own head because I'm like, I know at 13, they're going to release them to like do whatever they want because that happened on the Gmail accounts. And so I was very savvy at like, what age I put them in.
So see, I was too honest with their actual age. I should have subtracted 10 years. That's my big problem.
Yeah. See, now that's a tip for your listener.
There's the tip. Go back 10. Yeah. Start them at age 4 even if they're 14. All right. So I wanted to also bring this up. There was a lot of other news recently around it beyond social media. So there were some companies that gear content towards children, including video game platforms. And there was a report by Hindenburg Research suggesting that content on Roblox was this quote unquote pedophile hellscape because they had titles such as Diddy Party and Escape to Epstein Island. It got a big splash in the New York Post and some other sites out there, but then they did their earnings report and everything was like, oh, we're still making a lot of money here. So, is this something that you track? As part of your Digital Citizen Academy, should it go beyond social media that parents should be monitoring a lot of these other sites that people are going to?
Yeah, so I monitor it both ways, like with my hat with Digital Citizen Academy, but I also am a board member of GameSafe, who actually creates solutions in that space. So we've been looking at this for a really long time, and I think that what the public doesn't recognize is that Roblox has 40 million different experiences. So they have also public bathroom simulator and swimming pools and spas and things like that, where essentially once they shut down, and a lot of people don't understand, but Roblox actually went in and bought out this entire adult, think about Discord for adults. I can't remember the name of it.
Okay.
They bought this entire, they bought this account, shut it down, and then said, hey, if you want to come over to Roblox, we have this opportunity over here. And it brought over millions upon millions of adults onto this child platform.
Ooh.
So the reason why their earnings aren't low is because they have what's called Robux, which is a digitized currency on their own platform that adults are using. And so you immediately, they amassed all of these adults and kids together on the platform. And so they're right. This is a total hell landscape for children because they are chronically and constantly approached by pedophiles.
What are the child protection features of Roblox? Are they lumped in with everybody else of they're pretending to care, but probably not?
Yeah, so they basically, if they get noticed, they'll kick an IP off of their off of their system. But like it's kind of a whack-a-mole situation. And what doesn't happen in that scenario is the parent isn't alerted and the child isn't protected or given resources for, which is why I really love GameSafe and what they do, because we want to give it back to the parent. So we're just like obviating the entire system. We're like really like, if you do this as a parent, you go in, it screens everything, it puts it against a threat model. And if there's a chat or so your kid gets approached, it actually alerts the parent on their dashboard and says, hey, this just happened. And then we've got resources that we're building out. I think in Q3, they're going to get released, but like that where the family's also going to have some resources that'll be able to say like, hey, your child was exposed here. Here's some of the things you can do. So we're trying to like do that gap because the platforms themselves aren't doing it.
Yeah. And again, is this something that parents have to continue to be aware of? Like, okay, so now I've got to monitor all of their social media stuff, and now I got to check what games they're playing or what they're, it just becomes like, I do parent my kids. I'm trying not to say like I'm just leaving them in a room somewhere, but at some point you can't just hover over them either. I mean, that can do some psychological harm too, right?
Yeah. For parents, sometimes the example I give is like when they're really, really little, you're kind of like the CEO, the executive, the chef, all of the things, right? And if your kids get older and they age into these experiences, we're supposed to let them explore out there. But of course, we still have to be their frontal lobe because it's not complete.
Right.
I always say as a parent, like you should be helping them create their own advisory board. You're not, you can still be on their board, but they should have somebody in mental health or somebody in medicine and somebody who's like in, library sciences or something like, like where are your kids going to get their information and are they holistically protected around those people around them? So if you digitize that and you think, okay, where are those resources for our kids? Like, where are they getting them? If 90% of their content is coming from social media platforms where it's other kids and influencers giving them that advice, it's probably going to be like a really strong board, right? And the company's going to fail. So you kind of have to, as a parent, think about like, how do I utilize those tools that they need and help them build that advisory board with good people as they age into using them.
Right. And so then my next question is the AI looming thing, because I don't know if we talked about this when we were last on the show, but since then there's been a lot of other stories that have come out about obviously AI deepfakes, and I think there was a school in New Jersey where some people were making deepfake nudes of some of the teenage girls at the school, and just the other day, I got an ad for Reddit where you can take two pictures of someone. You could take two pictures and then create an animation where then they start kissing. Like, I was like, this is offensive and this should not be allowed. But there's all these companies out there that are doing a lot of these AI deepfakes. Whether they're fully clothed or not fully clothed, that's still wrong, right?
Yeah. I mean, in one of my talks that I give on AI, I like highlight a bunch of these different apps. A lot of them are like, you have to be 4 and up, 9 and up. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, there's not.
That's horrible.
Yeah, so you can imagine, I get called in on a weekly basis multiple times into school districts on a national level, like with all of these issues that are happening. One of my favorites is Pocket Girl, which is an app that is like trending among middle school boys, where you can actually have your own AI girlfriend. And it's actually a true girl who's like videotaped that they deep fake animations, and you can actually ask her to do whatever you want. And the whole goal is to figure out, what limits can you push her beyond? And then it's now you have a girlfriend in your pocket. So, it's just like the debauchery of like all of the things that are happening out there.
Yeah.
I think that parents need to know about it. And I think it's important. There's real consequences. So the young 14-year-old in Orlando, if you haven't followed that story, But this kid, mom is an attorney, like great parents, all of these things. Like he was using an AI chat character AI
Yep.
and character, and fell in love with her, and then decided that the real world just wasn't as good as like being able to be in death and in with her. And he was a smart kid. Like he knew that she wasn't real,
Yeah.
but still took his own life. So it's getting very intense in from an emotional perspective, because our kids are starting to not be able to differentiate between real world and online worlds, and that's making me very uncomfortable.
Yeah. So what's the solution then, or is there a solution? Do you just have to continue? Like it almost feels like you're playing whack-a-mole a lot with, between raising awareness about social media addiction, but now you've got to go after AI deepfakes and video game companies, and there's probably all of these different technological innovations that are happening. With it's almost like a fire hose of content coming at you.
It is. I mean, if you look at it and you sit on that reactive stage, it definitely feels untenable and that you can't do enough about it. What I do in my space is through Digital Citizens, I go in and I talk to the kids and I educate them before the stream, right? Can I keep the innocent?
Yeah.
And I really teach them the mechanism in twofold. I tell them that they're the largest cohort in history technologically, that they've built in, big tech has built in the dynamic to keep them isolated and siloed so that they don't have power. I show them the terms of service that they agree to. And then I also show them the brain research. And I show them, here's the structural and the neurochemical damage that's occurring to your brain, and they are incensed by that.
Right.
So I really get ahead of it, and so I basically am creating these like little digitized armies of kids, and so that's really rewarding to me, and it's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how we're going to get to it otherwise, except for let them be the stewards of the space and start to be the voice, and to start rejecting some of the algorithmic rules and tools that are being forced down their throats.
Yeah, I think the thing you told me on the last show that you did that you found encouraging was you asked all of the older kids if they would allow their younger brothers and sisters to have this, and most of the hands shut up and said no. We, at least they were recognizing the power that a lot of this social media stuff had. But I'm hoping that maybe this generation we'll move and make it better for the next generation. But I'm still worried about the current generation, especially as they go into adults, because you see a lot of adults addicted to this stuff too. Right. And like, how can we get them either the help that they need, or at least get them to recognize, like, just turn off that phone or do something, kind of see the signs, right?
Right. I think it's like losing that ability to be present in your own life and like taking a minute, like I start my day with gratitude, I end my day with gratitude. I don't have technology around me. And I like really kind of set my own intention before I let whatever my device is. I was rushing around like a mad woman trying to get ready for our podcast at 3 hours ahead of time because I thought we were doing it like crack of dawn my hours. But I usually have that time where it's kind of like this. I'm not a really good meditator or any of that stuff, but it's mindful intention, right? And I allow myself to put people into that, I think if we teach the next generation that they can do that and not let kind of technology absorb them into that kind of like massive like stream of consciousness, like it really truly gives them back peace and joy again in their lives.
Yeah, until the next technological innovation comes around, and of course people are now talking about VR and AR as like, are you monitoring that space as well? Because God only knows what could happen there, and with bad stuff aimed at kids.
Well, I was talking about VR pornography. And so PlayStation 5 actually has the ability to stream through Pornhub VR porn for kids. And so, and also very helpful that they put on a secret hidden browser into PlayStation. So it's like, until, we've got to tell parents, right? Like, and we have to like stay on top of that. And that's my reactive stage that I'm on, because I have to pay attention to all of those things.
Right.
But I definitely have to go over to the proactive stage and talk to kids and say, like, hey kids, like this is going to come, how are you going to handle it when it gets there? And really trust in their willingness and ability to make the right choice.
Yeah, we talk to a lot of security officials on the show. We with tech security and cybersecurity, and I always feel like that they're not only are they very paranoid about a lot of things, but it keeps them up awake at night with all the different hacks and stuff. I imagine that with all of these potential threats, that the same thing happens to you. Do you stay awake at night, or because you're being mindful of this thing, you can separate a lot of the horrors that you see or a lot of the outrageousness?
It does keep me up. I mean, a lot of people are like, I don't, how do you sleep? And I was like, unsettled. I feel like we have all the information, right? We know, for instance, that there's millions upon millions of kids that are being trafficked on a daily basis. And we can go and speak about it, and we can even show evidence about it. And when we don't have the responsiveness and people are like, thank you very much, you're fired, we're not going to have you on the show anymore, or we're not going to do this anymore, like that's really frustrating to me. Like why are we not doing more in that space? And that's what keeps me up at night, is like I think that we can do more. And I've got a ton of suggestions for people for you to interview. Like we have Noel Thomas, who wrote Dark Watch, and he has a tool that goes out and actually heat maps all of the massage parlors and things like that, where you're having like these kind of illicit services that are happening. And he can do it in any city, anywhere. And he did it live for us in a presentation. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is life-changing. So a lot of tech is being built to go and shut down some of the stuff from a fiduciary standpoint, right? You shut down the finances, they can't pay for it.
Yeah.
It gets shut down. Pornhub is a great example. Lila McKenowitz, she actually shut down all and brought, she's an attorney, brought to total into the entire opening. She's like, here's where all this money is happening. So they lost every single sponsor in PayPal. So now you can only use cryptocurrency or wire transfers in order to pay for your services at Pornhub.
Oh, wow. So, didn't even know that.
That's amazing, right? So so she's another great one that would be incredible to interview. Like there's a lot of really good solutions coming in. And so when I do sleep, it's because I remember that before I go to bed.
Okay.
I'm not in this alone.
I want you to stay healthy, Lisa. I think because you're fighting the good fight for a lot of parents out there. So again, give me a couple of where can people go if they want more information? Like just give me a couple of places that parents should go.
So one, I would say, obviously my site, digitalcitizenacademy.org.
Yep.
We've got a ton of things that we're trying to get into schools and all of that. So if they want resources or things like that, that's where I would start. Also GameSafe AI, gamesafe.ai. If you have a kid that's gaming, for sure, put it on there. I think that we're covering Roblox, Minecraft, and Fortnite at the time. And then we're actually moving to device level monitoring after January. So that's going to be a really good game changer for families, because we're going to be able to actually protect kids.
Yeah.
And be very contemporaneous with that solution for families.
All right. Dr. Lisa Stroman, thanks again for being on the show. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Awesome. Thank you again.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Today in Tech. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.